Great. I'm Elizabeth Wood. Welcome to this brand new class, Quantum and Galactic Anthropology. Today I'm going to define these two brand new-ish, pretty new branches of science. I'm not the only person who does galactic and or quantum anthropology. I might be the only one who does both. I don't really know. But that doesn't matter. Here we are. We're all going to be galactic and quantum anthropologists by the end of this class. And so today I'm going to be teaching you about these two branches of science, how you can use them exactly in your life. I'm going to give you some practical tools to be able to do that. I'm also going to teach you a very basic version of a very complex theoretical idea. And so this is what I would call cultural change mapping. This is what I've been nervous about because this particular mapping technique has been sitting in my closet for probably about 12, 13 years now. And when developing this over about a decade of work, so I started doing this work very early on at about the age of 17. I was in college at 17 and I started in on developing this work at that point, and it was fully developed a decade later. And then from there, moving into these other realms of science, I got into quantum and galactic anthropology and mysticism. And so I've been combining both. And by the end of the day, I'm going to have you trained up to actually use this particular mapping tool so that you can start to organize your cultural reality. I'm going to apply it to your personal development today. If you want to learn how to apply it to other areas of your life, I'm going to be teaching a class about that. And it would be called cultural mapping techniques. And we're going to go in and we're going to actually, in that class, we're going to learn how to use this model for everything from healing a traumatized version of yourself to building community that you want to making big changes in your personal culture or your community or even your state or nation state, and applying it, of course, as a predictive model. Those are things we're not going to be doing at the end of our time today. But instead, you're going to at least be able to use this model for your personal development. So we're going to do a practice model for you to work with, and that'll be fun homework for you to do, to take home. Now, this model is very deceivingly simple, and it actually is part of a very large, what's called a heuristic theory and a substantive theory that work together. And every time you use the model, it proves the heuristic and substantive theory behind it. The theories behind it are very deep and would take me, years to really train you up on. However, I'm going to give you a good quality basic taste of what's the theory behind this model. The model itself can be used as a predictive model, which is why it was in a box for so long. It was in a box for so long because I was literally told by my academic teachers and peers that this was dangerous and that I ought to be very careful about who I teach it to. Well, that was about 13 years ago, and here we are. It's time for us to talk about it. And you're here because you're meant to hear about it. You're meant to integrate this at least energetically into your body. So I realized that much of the stuff I'm going to talk about is really deep stuff. We're talking about quantum physics. We're talking about galactic stuff. We're talking about anthropology, which is an incredible branch of science. And your brain mind might not understand everything I'm saying. So I want that to be secondary. It's secondary. I'm transmitting huge amounts of light to you today. That's our first priority. I'm transmitting galactic and quantum consciousness to you through my words, through the techniques I'm going to teach you, And that's why I decided to do this via webinar video. So you can see my eyes, you can see my light. Let that move through you first. That's the most important part of what we're learning today, is integrating light as information first. In fact, that's part of quantum anthropology. So you're already, by just being here to listen, you're already prepared as a soul for this info. Soul to soul, we're connecting on this. Now, later, you're going to be able to use this in a much more brain-mind way. And I will have you write some things down if you want to. But the great thing is, this is recorded. So you can listen to it over and over again. And I think that you'll want to, because the richness that I intend to present to you is some really seriously great, deep, thick stuff. So here we are. Let's get started. Let's define. We need to define our parameters here. We need to define what is anthropology, what is quantum anthropology, and what is galactic anthropology. So we're going to define some terms, and I'll define terms as we go along so it can make more sense for you. But again, first priority is to map to, there's a mystical term, to map to the light I'm presenting to you. It's complex, holographic, very intelligent light. And it's not my light, it's not Elizabeth's light, it's source light. So all this is stuff that I learned through source. And sure, I might be able to take credit for it as Elizabeth, but that's not really my interest as a soul. So my soul is always here to advance humanity. That's why many of us are human, right? To advance ourselves. Here's the prime time, right before 2020. Here we are, prime time to begin using these tools that were brought to this earth for a reason. So what is anthropology exactly? It's the study of human beings, past, present, and future. And I'm a futurist. So I'm really interested in how are we going to develop our futures? How are we going to get to our incredible calling as a human species? I see and I believe that our calling as a human species is to be galactic emissaries of peace, of unconditional love, and universal compassion. These are very specific things that we're being called to do. That's partially why we've ended up for 500,000 years in quite the power struggle, in quite the subservience situation, in quite deep oppression, so that our hubris wouldn't get in the way of us finally attaining consciousness at a very high level, galactic and universal consciousness. So galactic anthropology is, hey, in the human future and right now and in the past, we have always been galactically influenced, and we have always been influencers. In the future of humankind, I want to see us be incredible galactic influencers and step into the role of teaching other species who may not have emotional bodies how to understand universal compassion and unconditional love. That can help end much of the struggle and the power play that's been going on at a galactic level with us involved for so long. So we have never been removed from the galactic level of reality. That's quantum anthropology. How has the galactic level of reality and all the different beings, whether they're material, physical, 3D beings or not, how have they been influencing us? How have we been influencing them? If you don't think you've been influencing the galaxy, I want to show you that is not true. You have. All of your guides, all the angels, they are playing at a galactic level. Why are they with you in specific? Why are they interested in being with you? because it turns out that human beings are incredibly special and interesting. And everything that you learn, that is something that your guides also are learning through you, through your experiences. Angels are in awe of our constant learning every day. You are influencing the galactic level of reality. And so we are both influenced and influencing, and I'm going to help you be able to grasp that really fully. But first, we had to define, what are we talking about when we're talking about galactic anthropology? It's an interspecies, interdimensional relationship with reality that's not a single lonely planet. And so, hey, I'm undoing a lot of suppressed science here. NASA would like us to believe we're all alone, and that's not true. So you all know that's not true. We're here talking about the truth. So what is quantum anthropology? Well, since anthropology is the study of humans past, present, and future, well, that's really also a quantum study too. How does the quantum reality affect humans and human culture, past, present, and future? Well, again, just like the galactic playing field, we've not ever been removed from the quantum. We have influenced it, and it influences us every single day. Just like you're influencing the galactic realm of reality every day. You too are also being influenced by and influencing the quantum realm of reality. So we're talking about a really amazing concept that there's layers to our reality. The quantum layer is so precious because in that quantum layer, it proves to us that the interconnectedness between us is very real, that there is no such thing as a personal experience. Your experience is intimately connected to the entire universe through the quantum and through the galactic. It might seem like you've been suffering alone at certain points in your life. That is false reality. We're going to change our culture today. We're going to change our personal culture. And by changing our personal culture, by connecting it to these other layers of reality, the quantum and the galactic, we're going to help change our own cultures. That's why I think it's been making me nervous because this is really big. It's a big shift. It's a massive shift for humankind to take clear responsibility and ability and capability to have influence over and be influenced by the galactic and quantum at the same time as they seem to be having a personal experience. So I want to help you take advantage of that because this is another level of awakening, another level of higher consciousness that's available. So let's talk a little bit about the quantum piece a little deeper. Why does the quantum piece prove that you don't have a personal experience, even though it seemed like it, right? Well, it has to do with quantum entanglement. And quantum entanglement says that all things at the universe start was actually packed in together as one thing, as a singularity, a single point in space-time where all matter began. And all universes start out like this. It's sort of like if Source, who's the intelligence behind all of these universes, if Source imagines then a universe into existence, well, it's starting through that imaginative energy that, say, a Big Bang will then occur. And so many universes are being born every day and many universes are disappearing because it's part of a grander thought process behind all the universes that we don't really fully understand yet. We know that there's a source to all of it, and that's who we're talking about. So I don't necessarily use the word God I use the word source field, because there's a mathematical truth to it and a physics truth to it, and of course, a spiritual truth to it. So quantum entanglement says that if any two particles have met, that they're going to affect one another, no matter how far away they are from one another. So that's really amazing, because if the whole universe actually was one singularity at one point in time, then that means that all the particles of the universe are constantly being affected by one another. That's what quantum is all about. The fact that I might be teaching this right now, and you might be somewhere in the world listening, but there is no separation between us, and there never has been. We are one. The beauty of the 3D and the body and the personal experience is that we're here to move out of that illusion. So the challenge is, can a human soul who really comes from the source field, can a human soul learn exactly who they are, even though they might be in a body that's full of trauma and full of what seems like an individual lonely experience? I think that's the job of human beings as we're awakening. That's the job of our journey in ascension, is to learn about the fact that we are all so intimately connected, that there is no difference between us at the quantum level, and that we are all individuated parts of source. From there, we can act as true creator beings and then come into, as an entire species, a whole entire galactic playing field ready and ripe for what we have to teach. We're teaching the source field and the rest of the galactic family that we have about universal compassion, unconditional love, and peace. And so through that, that's the journey. Through that, we are learning about how we are not disconnected. We are all one. We're not just one species. We are one with everything around us. And that affects us very deeply. Now, that's the esoteric conceptual part of quantum anthropology based in quantum physics. But there's other aspects of quantum physics that affect our human experience, such as the human vortex. The human vortex, again, it's an illusion that it's one single thing all alone by itself. It's not. There's a reason why your energy field is a double vortex. So your heart field literally creates an electromagnetic field around your body, and that electromagnetic field around your body has a shape. It's a shape that looks like a big tornado going up and out, and another big tornado going down and out. This is the double vortex, and that happens to be the shape of how atoms' vortexes look at a quantum level, how particle vortexes work, and of course, at other higher levels, how the electromagnetic field around the planet looks, how the electromagnetic field around the sun looks, or the galaxy, or even the universe. So it turns out that the patterns of reality that link us up to both the galactic and the quantum are going to be the same. And we know this. This is something that the ancients said, as above, so below, right? And that's a fact. So we're talking about how the quantum affects our physical reality so much that it's intimately tied to it. What other things can we learn about the quantum? Well, that vortex doesn't stay still. It spins. It spins. Electrons spin around atoms. They spin, and there's two different directions that spinning can go. So those spins are orbits. Electrons orbit their atoms. Atoms orbit each other. Molecules orbit one another. Turns out cells do too. They're always moving, they're always shifting. And humans do too. We orbit each other. It might not be the perfect looking golden ratio orbit, but we orbit each other, and the sun and the earth, there's an orbit there. Moon orbits the sun. The whole solar system orbits other solar systems, all to create a big galaxy that's orbiting around its own atomic core. That's our supermassive black hole. And then galaxies are orbiting each other. Right now, Andromeda has been hanging out in our orbit, and we're going to merge into one big galaxy. It's going to be really interesting. So all these orbits are part of our quantum reality too. These are concepts that you can integrate into your reality. How am I orbiting people? How am I, as a personal, individual, seemingly individual part of Source, orbiting all these other different people? Like right now, we're all orbiting each other. And while it seems like I'm the centerpiece at the moment because you're here to listen to me talk, that's not necessarily going to stay the same. When we go into Q&A, we're all going to orbit the person who asks the question, right? So this is a psychological concept about how the quantum world is always giving us a blueprint to work from, that there's nothing wrong with spiraling clockwise versus counterclockwise or anything like that. They just have different qualities, and why vortexes work the way they do, why do particles work the way they do. Another thing that you can see at the quantum level, a scientific concept that will help you combine all these things, is the golden ratio. 369 is the pattern, the core pattern that you can find at any layer of reality. And that's something that, for example, Nikola Tesla knew about. He said, if you can understand the 369, you can understand the universe and God. And that's what he's talking about. Now we can actually see that. We can see it in particle physics. We can see it in quantum and galactic physics and cosmological physics. The golden ratio is always there. And in the human body, it's no different. So you're intimately connected to these layers of reality. You've never been separated from them. The fact that your physical body looks the way that it does is proof of that. The way that it functions is proof of that. This is deep conceptual pieces here that are going to change the way you view reality and help you enter into a higher state of conscious oneness. So how do you integrate that? Well, I want to give you a tool. I want to give you a tool to combine both your galactic consciousness, the reality that, hey, I'm part of a galactic playing field, not just a collective planetary one, not just a personal community one, not just me alone in my room, right? That you're intimately connected to the galactic all the time. And that beings from that level, whether they're in the 3D physical dimension or not, are constantly interested in what you're doing all the time. And how do we know that's true? Well, we can actually measurably understand personal experiences. Again, even though I use the word personal, but what I'm talking about is that we're going to overcome this idea that we're all alone and only having a personal experience. Yet I want to validate and uplift what many scientists would love to dismiss as the anecdotal personal experience and say, no, it is not anecdotal, which means you can then summarily toss it out. Not at all. The human experience is a very beautiful experience. Each individual human has the potential to completely change their own culture and the cultures around them, because culture is layered too. And we're going to talk about those layers here in a second here. But that human, their experience with guidance or with the angelic, or their wanting to have a deeper experience, even if you've never been able to see or talk to any of your guides, your experiences are still really important. Every single one of your experiences are constantly feeding back into those layers of reality, the quantum layer and the galactic layer. And that's what's so cool about it. So that now, when you have an experience, you're going to understand that you just changed the whole universe. Your experience is not singular, alone, like an island, separated. It's part of the whole. And it's wonderful, it's grand. So we get to reclaim our personal experience as part of the great, grand feedback system between our souls and the rest of Source and all the other individualized souls. It's just that they're learning too, that they're part of Source, that they're not really individuals at all, and that the source field is trying to learn through us, through all versions of consciousness, through all particles of reality, through all the patterns. That's the point of any universe, is so that source can learn. It's so wonderful that source that's made everything past, present, and future, and imagined all possibilities already, is still learning through us right this moment, is learning through us. That's what's so cool about our truth, about our true reality as a human, is that this human experience. So that's the heart of quantum and galactic anthropology and why we're here talking today. So let's get into some practical tools to help you integrate these very big concepts. So first, I want you to, if you have a piece of paper, or if you'd like to do this later, you'll want to draw an XY axis. And we're not going to do algebra. I'm going to change up this XY axis for you. It's going to be a different kind of use for this most wonderful chart, right? So our XY axis, here's the X, right? And back in algebra, we learned, about numbers, X at the very center is 0. And then along one side of the number line is positive numbers, and along another is negative. Well, we're going to swap that up. And then you have the Y-axis that goes through it. And then usually that would have been a whole nother set of positive or negative numbers, right? Again, we're going to swap this up. But you remember what an XY axis looks like. So if you were to draw one right now, we're going to change it all together. And this is part of the theoretical work I wanted to show you today. Now the x-axis is time, and the y-axis is space. So time. On the x-axis at the very center, well, that's you. You are the center. There's you. There's your experience in this very moment. So there's the moment, right? And that's really interesting, because what happens if you put your consciousness in time? Well, you're either going to go forwards or backwards in time, right? Well, that's what a lot of us have been trained to do. Well, I got to think about the future. That's the same as taking your personal consciousness, where all the power is in the moment, and then trying to put your personal consciousness into the future, where you can't actively do anything. You can only try to imagine stuff, but you'll not see necessarily the manifestations of what you've just imagined or hoped for, right? So I say that's us leaking energy into the future. Now, that doesn't mean we don't want to think about the future, but by the end of the class, I'm going to show you how to efficiently do that without leaking a whole bunch of worry energy into the future, right? And then, of course, if at the center there's you, and you were to consider the past on that timeline, if you were considering the past and worrying about the past, I really don't want that to happen again, right? And you're worrying about that. Well, that's us leaking energy into the past. Again, trying to put your consciousness in a place where it can't actively do anything. Well, let's bring all of our energy back to the center. Now, where can we move our consciousness? Well, we could be in the present moment, in that 3D reality, in this very physical, in the moment reality, and be doing things in that reality. That would be one layer of reality in space. But there's other layers to space. And that's where the x-axis or y-axis comes in, this axis, right? So we're going to swap our worrying about the past and future. We're going to swap it for what layer of reality am I going to attach my personal experiences, work, transformation, etc. in this moment? Which layer of reality am I wanting to work with? So if the center of the y-axis, that up and down, is where you are physically in this moment in the 3D, if we were to go up a notch, then we're looking at maybe the household. Now it's up a notch. You're still in the present, but you're considering with your amazing brain, who's totally capable of understanding all these layers of reality. You're going to use your amazing brain to consider your household in that moment. And then what's another notch up above that? Well, maybe your neighborhood. And another notch up above that, your greater community. Another notch above that. Well, the conglomerate of communities, maybe we call that a town. Another notch above that. Well, that might be, in America at least, we call it counties, right? And then what are a bunch of counties considered a nation state? So in the United States, our states are actually sovereign states. And then what's another notch above that? What's sovereign states who all glom together called? We call those nations, right? So a nation, an actual nation versus just a state, right? And then another notch above that. Well, what do we call all the combined nations? Multiple nations in one specific area. Well, that might be a continent. What do we call combined continents? Well, that's our planet. What is above that? It keeps going. What's above that? Well, our solar system. What do you call a combination of planets around a central figure? A solar system. What about a combination of solar systems? Might call out our solar system group. And then that gets up to the galaxy. And then there's a whole bunch of conglomerations of galaxies. We have a name for ours. It's called Laniakea. Big, huge, giant armful of billions of galaxies called Laniakea. And then there's more above that, all the way up to the universal level. The amazing part is that all the personal change, if I made you feel real small just then, I'm going to make you feel real big in a minute. But all that personal change you go through every day, all the challenges that you face and overcome to get to where you are now, they actually affect all those layers of reality. That's so amazing. Now let's take it down to the other layers, the smaller layers on the bottom part of our y-axis. So here we come back to our center point. That's our body in the moment, here, right now. What do we do when we go one layer down, going into the body, going into our experience? What is the body made of? These big organs, lots of organs and systems, right? So we have our skin organ, we have our circulatory system, our skeletal system, our nervous system. We have all the different amazing organs. And I pointed out in my introduction to this class, my little sales intro, that turns out we've actually discovered some new organs over the past couple of years. The mesentery and the interstitium. These are new organs that we didn't know were there. So we still have a lot to learn at every layer of reality. It's great. I'm very excited about it. I love that we have more to learn. You know, life's never boring, right? And then you go down another layer. Well, if you were to zoom into one of those organs, what is it really made of? Lots of cells. Cells. Well, you remember, if you took any biology, and you might have in school, and you look at a map of a cell, right? A picture of a cell, it kind of looks like a little town, doesn't it? There's all these little bits and pieces that have their jobs, and they're moving around inside of that cell. A cell is not still. It's very much alive and very conscious. And it looks very much like, just like all the other patterns of reality. There's golden ratio patterns there. There's a vortex. The cell itself has its own electromagnetic vortexes too, just like your whole body does, right? Then you go deeper, go in deeper, another layer. Well, there's all these molecules, and they're interacting, and they are following the same rules. They have electromagnetic vortexes. They are orbiting around one another. Then you go even smaller, you're looking at the atomic. The same thing, you'll find vortexes, you'll find the golden ratio, you'll find all of these amazing, very seemingly alive aspects of reality there. Then you go even smaller into particle physics, and even smaller until you end up at, just like the edge of the universe, you've ended up at the source field. So here we have two ways to find source. At the edge of the universe, at the very deepest level of quantum reality. That's where all of the energy, all of the consciousness, all of the light of reality begins. And it's a real, actual thing. At that level, particles act like frequencies, and frequencies act like light. And it's quite amazing, and we're still learning about it, just like we're learning about our bodies, just like we're learning about the cosmos. So lots to learn. But at that level, all of your conscious reality, all of your changes and your challenges that you've overcome, all that also affects those layers of reality. Your cells are affected, your organs, your systems. We know this because we've watched people throughout time attain very high levels of consciousness that we've called enlightened. And they physically have changed because of that. When you're around someone who's done a lot of work on themselves and is continuing in their personal development path, we call them awake, right? We have names for this stuff. They're more awake, they're lighter, they're brighter. We can perceive that light in ways that we couldn't normally before, maybe when we knew them earlier on. I'm sure most of the people who knew me when I was a teenager would be very surprised at who I am now and how my energy is. So all these changes are intimately tied to all these Y-axis layers of reality. And then, of course, the time part. Well, you can use that, and I'm going to show you towards the end, when I teach you this mapping technique, how to determine how to use time to your advantage, to make major changes or shifts to get you faster to where you want to go. My interest is change. How can we use these concepts to help us change, to help us develop, to help humanity change? And because I know that each of you as individuals, if you take these pieces and you start to play with them, that they're going to help you understand change better, then in your communities, that's going to fractal out. And in those layers of reality that you're a part of, the same ones I'm a part of, those changes in you, they fractal out. Whether or not you share this stuff or not, they're going to fractal out into our realities, which is why it's time now for us to talk about it like this, to bring galactic and quantum consciousness to the table as a permanent part of the way we think about our realities. So, all right, that's the first practical piece. Start to think about reality as this XY axis of time and space. If you're in meditation, the next thing you can do to include these parts of reality into your personal reality is to use meditation to help you envision these layers of present reality. Spend some time going in really deep into one of your cells. Ask to be shown what that looks like. What's it like to be inside one of your heart cells or one of your face cells? What's it like to be at the quantum level or at an atomic level? Hang out there. Hang out there with your consciousness in that present moment and see how you feel. Your emotional body and your physical body are your greatest tool. We have microscopes and telescopes and particle machines and all this stuff. But the fact is that the human body is still the number one greatest tool for you to learn about reality and the truth of it. Use your amazing brain to play around at different layers of reality. So that's homework number 2. First, you want to understand how layers of reality look and work and where you are on that scale, where your present consciousness is, and then learn how to move your consciousness into different layers of reality by simply meditating. Meditate on what it's like to look and hang out at a galactic level, just looking at the Milky Way. And then what is it like to look at our neighboring galaxy, who's soon going to be our galaxy, Andromeda? Let's look at her. What is that like? What does that feel like in your body? What does it feel like to look at Laniakea? If you get a picture from the internet and then you gaze at it, use that as from your imagination. This is the third eye internally functioning. When you look at a picture of something, your brain makes a map of it, then the third eye maintains it, and you can then navigate into it or navigate around it. That's the internal function of the third eye. All of you have it. It's literally called the imagination. So you're simply imagining the picture you saw, which is a true picture of Laniakea, and then you're going to navigate in it energetically, feeling what it feels like to be in witness of all these billions of galaxies, creating a beautiful flowing arm of galaxies. Do the same at all the quantum levels. Go deep into your cell, into your atom. Go into a black hole. What's that going to be like? It's not scary, by the way. Go into a black hole. I promise you'll like it. It's very still. It's very still. It's very smooth. It's very interesting. And it's a special place for you to discover how you actually have access to all these layers of reality, even though you are using your body to do so. Why is that possible? Well, some more physics for us. It turns out that the brain itself makes structure on all dimensions. Why does it do that? Because the DNA told it to. The DNA is a technology that was created in this galaxy, our specific DNA. For example, in Andromeda, you're not going to find this kind of DNA. The bodies of the beings that live in Andromeda, they didn't come from our DNA. So the Milky Way's DNA, all the kind of cookie cutter star-shaped beings with heads, arms, and legs, that comes from a root DNA that was created. And that DNA was specifically made to enjoy and play with all the accessible dimensions and layers of reality. Dimensions are simply qualities of light that define these layers of reality. And so as we say, well, I'm trying to access this dimension or whatever, the fact is it's always been there. So then we're shifting limiting beliefs and we're shifting limitations that are simply like trauma and egoic structure out of the way so that we can truly access the power of our bodies, the human experience, to experience all these layers of reality and all the qualities of light that they contain. So this is what the brain and body's ability is. This is the nature of now grasping the fact that your body is capable of playing in all 12 dimensions all the time at the same time. Full body enlightenment, not just mentally getting it anymore, but having a physical experience of, oh, I am a multidimensional being. I am a multidimensional being. When we say someone has a soul, what are we talking about? That's the source field. That's the consciousness of the source field moving through the physical body experience. And that physical body experience is a 12-dimensional experience. We keep thinking that we're separated from these things, and we're not. And that is what I really believe quantum and galactic anthropology can give us, is scientific facts that give us access back to our true reality. Your body can perceive all these layers of reality and all of these dimensions all at once. And we might call that full body enlightenment. And that's what we're shooting for. And we want that for everybody. That's when the human race will become emissaries of real universal compassion and love and peace, is when we're getting there, when we all get there together. And we got to start somewhere. Where does culture change begin? With you. So that's where we're at this moment. Fantastic. Let me make sure I'm on track here. All right. So we talked about zooming in and zooming out of these layers of reality, how to use the XY axis in a brand new way. And let's also talk about what are some of the changes that might happen to us as we start to play with these things. I'm giving you this as literally a new way of living, a new way of life to consider all the time. What's going to happen to us as we integrate this as personal individuals and, of course, a species? Well, there's going to be massive changes to the way we interact with each other. And as you probably have seen me talk or heard me talk in some way, shape, or form, you know that I like to be able to be very personable. I want people to connect to me, not to my ego, but to my true soul. So I work very hard at moving my ego out of the way so that I can connect to you soul to soul, soul to soul. And that's really key here, because that, by being aware of these quantum and galactic factors all the time, by just having that as part of our conscious framework, well, that changes the way we interact with each other. Then we're going to be talking soul to soul, not ego to ego or wound to wound. Imagine a society that does that. Very different culture, right? Very different culture. Incredible equanimity comes from that. So we're looking at serious culture change, starting with us. Hey, I might be really different than you, and I might be unique, literally, like there's no bodies like mine, right? There's not going to be a soul like mine, but I'm one. I'm one with you. And no longer is my lack of particular equality a problem. Then it's all equanimity at the conscious quantum level. Equanimity, meaning this person with these experiences and this person with these experiences, that we are all one. And then we are all conscious of the fact that the purpose is for us to keep adding our facets of learning back to the source field. This is incredible what will happen to our cultures as we begin to function this way. And so there's a lot to talk about with what's going to happen culture change wise by integrating both quantum and galactic consciousness into our cultures. Another one that I think is really important is the way we influence one another. So then no longer am I going to sit there and judge someone for saying something that I think is not true. There's not going to be any judgment anymore. Instead, I'll discern for myself what I might take from what they're going to say and what I might leave. And then personal discernment, full body personal discernment, will become the new way that we influence one another. And then I can discern, well, what do I want to bring to the table for everyone here? Or what do I want to bring to the table via social networks or the rest of the planet? What do I want to share? And then I value that with great equanimity to all the other facets out there. And by my own merit, continuing to build on the light that I have to bring, then my merit becomes very important. The fact that I've proven my trustworthiness and my honesty, proven the fact that I'm very good at helping give information or helping the vulnerable or being in selfless service in some way, shape, or form. And so then this person over here who literally cannot feed themselves and is in a wheelchair, their soul and their contribution to society is no longer judged by the utility of their body, but it's the light of their consciousness that is discerned as most precious and in great equanimity to this person over here who might be physically actively doing a lot to make big major physical changes in the world, in the material world. But their souls and their light are in equanimity to one another, and no longer do we judge the value of human consciousness by how useful they are in the material. That's what I'm talking about. And this changes our political systems and our economies very dramatically, because no longer can someone be in a role where they're helping to represent huge bodies of people without having gained that position through incredible merit. What I'm talking about is literally a different way of having government as well. Meritocracies and a non-paid position every time, because, well, it's going to change our financial system as well. No currencies at any layer of reality are going to be better than any others. They're all going to be backed by real goods, real services, real quality, physical value, such as gold, silver, platinum, and all these other wonderful things that currency can be backed by, including your own physical prowess or whatever level of beauty and equanimity you have to offer. Even the person who is in a wheelchair and can't feed themselves, their beautiful souls in equanimity are going to help even out that playing field. Again, I'm talking about some really intense concepts here, and I don't necessarily want you to try to wrap your brain around it all at once. Let it move through you. Just kind of hang out with the light that I'm trying to share with you here, because light is information. Your body's going to understand this probably first before your brain does. Let that occur. Let your soul hear what I'm saying. That the financial systems and the political systems, the economies of the world at all levels and layers of reality are going to be changed by these beautiful concepts of galactic and quantum human experience. And by being able to welcome them in us first right now, we're taking part in that massive change. by simply just trying to hang out with this info. So there's nothing special you have to go out and do. Just be. Be quantum, be galactic. That's your nature. I'm bringing you back to your true human nature. And I'm giving you a little glimpse of what the future may hold as we continue on that path. Because we've got a lot of work to do. You know, that road to the golden age is a long, hard road of dismantling and rebuilding and reusing and throwing stuff out and all kinds of things. But if we can come on that road with this beautiful model of consciousness, then we're going to be able to get to that golden age gateway that we have to build, by the way. We're not going to just suddenly come upon it. This is effort that we have to put into ourselves first. By changing yourself, by being open to and welcoming all of this energy and information, you yourself are creating massive change on the global and galactic and quantum scale. So don't have any doubts on that. It's absolutely the case. And now we've begun, we've got started with it. And there's going to be biological changes too. I don't know exactly what those biological changes will be, but I believe that as we come into, because I'm a futurist, I'm interested in the future, right? So I'm kind of giving you a glimpse of what I've theorized may happen to us as we continue to integrate both quantum and galactic concepts all the time as part of our reality. Well, what I think will happen is that the spiritual gifts of the human body will be reconnected for everyone. I believe, and have real scientific proof to back it up, that the human as a being is psychic. You're psychic. I'm not the only psychic here. All humans are psychic. What does that mean? That means we can perceive external information at all layers and levels of reality, and we can perceive internal quantum information as well. And you access it through the imagination. The imagination is not fake. It is a doorway. It's a doorway to the source field. So what we're talking about is using our human bodies to access the source field and all of its information. And that means access to each other. That means that the human being is naturally meant to be in tune with one another in a beautiful way. What will our societies look like when we're in tune with one another psychically? When we're no longer in oppression anymore, but in sovereign power and empowerment? Then we're going to be tuning into one another at another level that we haven't had before. And so at the very beginning of the human experiment, humans had that. But then oppression happened, and we got separated from that skill. We got told that the imagination isn't real, which is not true. And now we have a chance to reclaim it. And by reclaiming it for ourselves and saying, it's my nature to be psychic. It's my nature to be telepathic, to be intimately, mentally connected to all layers of reality. In fact, my physical body is built to do so. And then there's two other spiritual gifts that our bodies have: to feel energy. I think the emotional body is special and unique. Not all beings have emotional bodies. Angels don't have feelings. Many beings do not feel emotions, and they don't feel energy the way that we do either. They're just very different. That's okay. Still in equanimity with the source field, because they're part of the source field too. That's really cool. That means we're in equanimity with all these really cool, advanced, interesting beings all over the galaxy, all over the universe, at all levels of reality and dimensions. We're all in equanimity. What a wonderful place where we get to be in equanimity at the same table and learn and share from one another with great merit, with great understanding, with great compassion. That's what humans are going to teach everybody else how to do, I think. So feeling energy, the empath ability, the divine feeling, so divine seeing, divine feeling, being able to feel energy, that's going to become more prominent. It's going to be something we're going to teach our children about. We're going to teach everybody about this by experiencing it, by practicing it, by being aware of our electromagnetic field and how we can feel the quantum. When you go and you zoom out and you look at Mauna Kea, or when you zoom out and you look at the Milky Way and you hang out there in meditation, how does it feel? Does it feel similar to being inside of a cell or to hanging out inside of an atom? Does it feel similar to be inside the center of an atom and the center of a black hole? Put your consciousness into those layers of reality. Notice how you feel. Feeling is like seeing, but you're feeling frequency and you're seeing light. So the third eye perceives layers of light, which are just frequency. And the heart space feels those same qualities of light. So I might be able to say, the quality of unconditional love, it looks like to me as a psychic as this lovely rose quartz pink color to me. Maybe it looks a little different to you. Is that wrong? No, it's your facet. It's your facet of the source that is learning that from that angle, right? So, anyone on this call is going to have their own special facet. Some of us will see very similar things. Some of us won't. But what we're looking at is always going to be the same thing. And then we're feeling it. Does that unconditional love, how does that feel in my body? Well, that's one of your greatest tools of your physical experience, is to be able to feel energy, to see it and to feel it. And then the last spiritual gift, coming back online, the biological changes that will happen to humanity as we start to bring quantum and galactic reality into our cultural reality through us right now, beginning now. And again, like I said, I'm not the only one who's talked about this. Maybe I'm the only one who's brought it all together in one big picture. I have no idea. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a whole bunch of people simultaneously doing this at all, because often I'll find that will happen. And we can see that throughout time that happens. And that's another proof of galactic influence, by the way, that people will start inventing similar concepts on the other sides of the planet all at the same time without having any interaction with each other. That's quantum and galactic reality for you, and that's a fact that we know about. Early on in the 1950s, for example, it was discovered that 144 scientists scattered all over the world had all started on the same exact inventions for free energy all at the same time. And this had been going on for quite a long time. Nikola Tesla was one of those 144. And so it was actually discovered later in the 50s that this had occurred during the turn of the century. Again, further factual proof that the quantum and galactic reality are constantly available and happening, and that they're part of our realities. All right, so the last biological change is divine knowing. The deep, intuitive gut knowing that we have with these beautiful bodies, it comes from your gut biome. Most of your body, actually, is not your DNA. If you were to suddenly freeze dry me, you're going to find mostly bacteria DNA, not Elizabeth DNA. And that bacteria is highly intelligent. There's bacteria in your brain running a whole lot of things. We've discovered that if you have one certain kind of bacteria in your brain, you're more apt to have an anxious experience versus a comfortable one in social circles. That's amazing that simply one little bacteria can do that. But that's only one of billions of functions that the bacteria have in your body, including intuitive divine knowing. When you listen to me speak and you go into your body and you really feel in your gut, is what she's saying true? Just kind of notice that. Ask your gut right now, is what she's been talking about, is this true? Let your gut let you know. If it says yes, it's going to open up, it's going to be excited. It might feel just kind of calm. If it says no, it might contract. And this is part of that full body discernment that I believe human beings will be able to access more and more as a species as we continue to bring in galactic and quantum cultural concepts as part of our norm. And that's where we get started. It starts with us. What a wonderful thing to visualize. Now we know where we're headed. We're headed to a very different way of culturally interacting with one another. Very good. So checking my notes here. So we're going to come into big culture changes too. So we've got biological changes that I mentioned. What are some of the cultural changes that will happen because of galactic and quantum consciousness really being integrated into human culture? Well, cultural changes that I mentioned had to do with everything from brand new systems of political and economic sharing, and of course, different kinds of relationships, more expansive connection to each other that is very based in connecting psychically and energetically to the collective. And of course, mindful, really limitless awareness of reality all the time. It's the end of loneliness. It's the end of isolation. It's the end of separation. And it feels better energetically to feel so connected. Even though you might be alone in your room, it feels like you're actually being part of something much larger than yourself all the time. And now we're actually saying, well, this is scientifically true, that this is not just an illusion that you're making up. It's truth. How wonderful. And then I think it'll be easier for us to collaborate, to co-create, to merge, and to create different relationships around everything from sexuality, community, business, food, you name it. And being able to intimately make negotiations with someone because you're able to recognize them in equanimity, even if they have a very different cultural background than you, you're still including all that equanimity from the quantum and galactic level in your negotiations. So that means that nation states are going to function very differently, because it's going to be about, what do I see? What do I feel? What do I know about what we're talking about here? Deep discernment that can't be tossed out the window. Decisions that are based on merit and equanimity for all layers of governance. How cool. That's cool. I like that idea. I like the idea of sitting at the table as an American representative who has gained my position through great merit, not through money. And same with maybe a Korean representative on the other side of the table, and we're making a negotiation based on what we see, feel, and know to be true, and based on the fact that we know we're in oneness and great equanimity at a quantum level, and that our decision-making in that moment has great grand effects, not just on our own nations and the globe, but the entire galaxy. That is true. That's true. Now it's time to see that come into cultural fruition. So giving you a chance to imagine what's possible, because that's the carrot on the stick, right? If you can start there within yourself and consider the person in front of you, no matter how challenging, as part of the source field that you're part of, in total equanimity, that their facet of reality is just as important, and that the interaction you're having is on a galactic stage, not just a personal one, that it has effects on all these layers of reality all the time because of quantum entanglement, then that changes the way we talk to each other. And that's a good place to start. It changes the way we interact. And that's a wonderful place to start. You can't put anyone in front of me, no matter how hard they might be stuck in certain beliefs about reality, no matter how many bad things they might have done. You can't put anybody in front of me that I can't connect to soul to soul. Some people think that might be annoying. Others think it's impossible. But the fact is it's not impossible. It's our nature. It's my nature as a human being to want to connect to whomever's in front of me and find some space of equanimity, even if it's simply the fact that we're part of the same quantum field, and maybe that's all we have in common, besides having a human body, right? And a human experience. But even there's so much richness there. And knowing that if I'm able to mirror that back to them, that they'll never be the same. Every conversation you have changes the universe. The lady in front of you at the store who was depressed and you tapped her on the shoulder and said, I just think that color on you is so beautiful. You have a nice shirt today. That just changed the whole universe. It's amazing. It's brilliant. It's beautiful. This is higher consciousness. Knowing that everything you do, every interaction you have is here to constantly create change, rippling through time space. That's why you're here. You're here as source to learn and to affect everything else. Good. So let's get into the theory part. I'm going to give you a model, like I said, that's been shoved in a closet for 13 years. And this model is deceivingly simple. It's very, very simple. That's what makes it so powerful. You can use this model to do many things. Anything that has to do with being human, you can use this model to make sense of data at all layers of reality. With this model, you can predict the future. With this model, you can affect change in a much more clear and real way for whatever layer of reality you intend. With this model, you can make sense of changes that have already occurred in the past to help you make better decisions for the future. With this model, you can track your personal development or the development of your family or the development of your business. You can even track the changes that have happened to your sweater. I know that sounds odd, but the fact is that this model can be used for any person, place, thing, or position, any kind of aspect of our reality that a human being can interface with. Eventually, I intend for this model to actually become a universal mapping tool that we can use to collect and organize data as we continue on our galactic journey as a species when we interface with new beings. If we interface with beings who are in a very different physical body than us, what are the common things that we can always be able to assess? Well, one of them is the fact that they might be in an actual physical body. And from there, you can make a lot of the interactions you have with brand new beings make a lot more sense. I'm showing you this far, far, far out vision for what this model is capable of. And because it's so simple, it can be taught to a child. It can be taught to anybody, pretty much. That's what's so cool about it. And it's also why I was told it was too dangerous to teach to the public. And at one point, my teacher pulled me aside and said, you should join the CIA. I was like, what? And she's from Berkeley. And I couldn't believe that's what she said. And I'm like, why? Why would I do that? And she said, Elizabeth, you could change it from the inside out. And what she was showing me in that one statement was, this tool is so powerful. You could even go into a big giant organization like the CIA or the FBI or whatever, and you could change it from the inside out by using this model. And that's not what I've chose to do. But I was told, hey, if you teach this, you need to teach ethics behind it. So I'm going to do that real quick here. We're meant to use this model for great good, to reach and attain the state of humanity that is going to bring us in equanimity with each other and create peace, compassion, and love as the great function of being human, and then share it with the rest of the galaxy and other galaxies. That's what we're meant to do. And if we use this for our own means and ends, if we use this selfishly, and I'm not saying like you can't use this for your personal development, that's not what I'm saying. But if you try to go in and use these models to go get yourself better, bigger, higher paying positions and places of power and all of this to influence in ways that will continue the subjugation of humankind instead of our sovereignty and empowerment, you could use this model to do that. And I'm asking you to consider deep inside why you might want to use this model in your life. If you could use this to create great change, which you can, then please use it for the benefit of all humankind and equanimity. Use it for good. Use it for light. Use it to help us all get to equanimity. I ask you for that. And that's all I'm going to say about that. I don't think I have to elaborate beyond that. But I know how powerful this model is. And I know that one day it may or may not get into the hands of people who want to continue to maintain their power. And so that's something we'll have to deal with when the time comes. In the meantime, we're here to advance our consciousness. So I'm very proud to give this to you, to help you, to advance your consciousness, and to help your societies, your communities. So the model we're going to use today, I'm going to show you how to make sense of your own personal development. I'm not going to show you just yet how to apply it to your culture, your society, your community in different higher levels of reality, because we won't have time. So that's a different class that I hope you'll come join me so we can go even deeper into this model, and I'll show you all the different ways you can use it. That'll be our cultural mapping class. And we'll be able to use it in lots of different ways. I'll spend the entire time just talking about exactly how to use it in these different ways. But today I'm going to show you how to use it just for your own personal development. And that'll be a good start. And if that's all you want to use it for, perfect. So that'll be great. Okay. So let's begin. Let's talk about this model. Again, deceivingly simple. You'll see what I mean. This model is based in what's called materialism. In anthropology, there was this really brilliant man during the 70s named Marvin Harris, who developed a theory called materialism. He said that if you can understand the material world of a cultural situation, you can pretty much guess to a very, very good degree what the other cultural structures will look like. So if you can determine how a group of people get their food exactly, which is a material aspect of reality, how they get their needs met, right? Shelter, food, clothing. If you can determine how they get that, you can actually, to a very great keen degree, guess at what kind of political systems and economies, at what kind of social systems they might have, and what kind of belief systems they might have. And he's right. Materialism is a very well-established theory in anthropology. But what we're going to do is we're going to take that concept and we're going to take it to a whole nother level. In this model, I've combined all the anthropological theories into a functioning, working method of cultural mapping. Now, remember our XY axis, time and layers of space reality, right? So we're going to pick, when we use our model, we got to pick, where are we going to start our model? And so we're going to pick the very center this time. You, right this moment, in the 3D material experience you're having in this body right now, wherever you're at, right? That's where our map is going to be. That's our first map. Later in the other class, I'll show you how to do maps from a lot of different angles on that XY axis. You got to pick a point in time. So maybe you want to do a map in the past, you can. Maybe you want to do a map of the future. We will this time. I'll have you do one on your own. Or maybe you want to do a map of a greater layer of reality or a more quantum layer of reality. You can. And you don't have to just go to a cellular reality. You could go to an object reality. So if you want to make a map of your sweater and the past that your sweater had, well, that's actually one of the first papers I wrote using this model. It's called Your Sweater Knows. And I handed it in to my teachers and they thought I was super weird. But what I was trying to prove is that because we can have a human relationship with this sweater, it's a human object. And in of itself, it has its own cultural connections. And this map can give us more clarity about what that relationship with reality the sweater has had, what relationship with your human reality it's had, right? Now, that sounds kind of strange, but it's incredibly useful for, say, a corporation to be able to track culturally how their material goods that they created, how that has actually had an effect on different layers of culture, right? All right, so let's get to the exact model. And this is something, again, that later, either now or later, you're going to want to write down. So we have 4 layers. Let's start at the very top. This is what we'll call superstructure. Now, there could be a lot of different names for this, but superstructure is what it sounds like. Structured concepts that are above everything else. It's like the oil on the water. Non-material things. These are beliefs, language. These are non-material things, concepts. Beliefs, language, concepts. So if you believe that what I'm saying is true, I've just affected the superstructure of your reality. If you believe that what I'm saying is not true, then I haven't affected your superstructural reality. I didn't add anything in to your belief system. Now you have something that you can say that you don't believe. Or now you can say that you do believe it, right? And so then you're going to have a little bit of a language change if you want to talk about, well, that's not true, and here's why. Your language is going to have to develop in order to say that that's not true. Or let's say you believe that what I'm saying is true. Well, now you've added in, and now we're going to add in a whole bunch of concepts, galactic and quantum concepts, into your belief system. Well, I don't believe that I'm, all alone and completely having an individual experience. Now I believe that I'm having an experience that's a quantum one and a galactic one and a universal one, and it's because we're all part of the source field. There's a brand new, beautiful superstructural belief, right? And you're going to have a language to describe it. That's what superstructure is. And so that's why the word superstructure is very handy, because it can include a lot of different concepts that are all immaterial, right? But still very important. What you believe or what you don't believe is going to affect all the rest of the model, right? So that's really important to consider. Now we have the second layer. The second layer is social structure. Who are you connected to? This doesn't just include people. I include my relationships with my animals, anything conscious. Who are you connected to? So if we're just making a model for an individual, well, your personal connections and friendships and even acquaintances, like maybe you know that one checker at the grocery store, and every time you go in, you always say hi. And that's a social structure right there. That's a point between two people, a relationship, me and the grocery store checker. It's a relationship. It might not be really a deep relationship, but that's still a relationship, right? So I include, of course, my family members if I'm talking about personal development for my map here, and friends and clients, and my relationship with all the other layers as well. But if we're really looking at personal development, who do you have the most interactions with? That's who you're going to really be looking at in your your social structure section, the second layer of your map. Then we come to the third layer, political economy. Politics and economics cannot be unmarried. They are one. Anything that is in politics is going to have an instant relationship with economics and vice versa. The political economy for the personal development version of our map really answers the question, how do you meet your needs? How do you get your food exactly? How do you get your shelter? So I might say, well, I'm getting my food from a grocery store, and I have to make money to buy that food. And I make that money through the social relationships I have because I'm personally employed. I'm self-employed, right? So that's a political economy. And then what are the politics of that? Well, I can say that I really don't have much say politically over what my currency is doing, what the dollar bill is going to do or not. But I have a personal relationship with money, so that counts. That means that I'm in a particular economic system, and that is very important to know. So I'm in a neoliberal capitalist economic system at the moment, and that counts. Even though that's a big system, it's still something I'm personally part of that has a great effect on my beliefs around money, around my relationships, and how those relationships help me get the money I need to get my needs met. If money wasn't in the picture, we'd be looking at a very different map. If I was trading with local people to do work and healing services and counseling and mentoring and seeing for them, and they were coming to bring food by as payment, well, that would be a very different looking map, right? But that's not what the map looks like. The political economy shows how intimately I'm connected to not only my state, but my nation and the entire globe. because it turns out that my clients are all over the world. So how does that happen? Well, that is the internet, right? And the internet has its own political economy, and in of itself, the internet is part of the last layer of our map. So let me backtrack. We've got superstructure, beliefs and concepts, immaterial. We have social structure, relationships. We have political economy. How do you get your needs met? Exactly. And then we have the material world. The material world in a personal development version of our map is going to include our body. What state is your body in right now? What's your shelter like? Physical money is going to be another thing you're going to add on your map. How much of that do you have? How much fiat currency do you have in the bank? Do you have other things of value that you can count into your political economy that bring things that you need to you? So, for example, my relationship with my husband is important because he actually is a hunter and he comes and he brings home meat for our family. And that's part of a very intimate political economy that he has with nature. And I have a relationship with him. And so that actually comes into my life too. And that's important to my personal development because that makes him very happy. And that meat also nourishes our family. So we've removed the money part out of it, unless you're counting paying for the license, right? I don't want to get too far off track here. The material includes the internet. How do I make sure that I get the workout that I want to get out there? It's the internet. I depend on it very heavily. So the internet and computers, my computer is very important materially. My special light so you can see my face well. These different programs, they're very important to me to get my needs met. And what else is so important to me? What else is important to my spiritual development, perhaps? Well, my clothes, right? I'm not going to get on here naked. I guess maybe that'd be a whole different platform, right? But at one point I realized while I was looking at my clothes, we're talking about spiritual development as a map here, that all my clothes were black because I was a goth kid in high school. And so I have all this black clothes. I actually had to go spend some money to have more colorful clothes so I don't look like a crazy goth. People are going to be like, she's interesting, but she's really dark. She's always in black, right? So that's important. That's a part of my material reality that I consider part of also my spiritual development, bringing in more color so that I can make sure my light is a very high quality for the videos that go out and reach the people. And those people then, they can trust me more because I'm not showing up looking like someone unfamiliar. I look like someone who's nice and colorful enough and these things, right? All right, so I'm trying to give you a little bit of examples as we're going along, but the 4 tiers are what you need to know. They are universal. They are universal. That means every single human being can use these tiers. Any kind of human relationship, these tiers can be applied, whether it be a relationship with an object. Like I could make an entire map over my relationship with my computer. I could make an entire map over my husband's relationship with the forest that he hunts in, or the gun that he uses, or the bow and arrow that he uses. I could make a whole map for just that. I could make a map using these 4 tiers of anything in reality, because we can have a human relationship with anything in reality. I can even make a map of my relationship with an angel, a guide, or with a galactic guide that I might not have met in physical person yet, but I can still say that they physically influenced me, or they influenced my beliefs or my ideas about reality. Well, that can all be mapped out with these 4 tiers. Now, I want to show you something that's really interesting, because when I was developing this model, this method of organizing data, I realized that when you would track changes that were happening to the data, which is another way this can be used, this would be used to then create a prediction. You can track changes over time, and you can see just which elements really have the most influence in your map. That means you're making maps over time. So one map isn't going to show you an entire picture of what could happen or what has happened. You'll have to use many maps to get that. But if you're tracking changes over time, one of the things I noticed is that culture change looks like DNA when it's changing. There's a double helix that's going on. And culture change especially, and this is the holy cow concept that I think my teachers, that's why they let me teach this in their classrooms, even when I was in bachelor school, because this is what's so wild about it. But if you work on the belief systems and the material at the same time, you're going to see massive change happen very fast. If you want to see change occur in your communities, in your life, in your personal life, you're going to want to work with beliefs and material. So for example, to see faster change, and the change, I'll give you an example in a second, and the change then, it ripples through. So from the belief systems all the way down to the material, it'll ripple through, and then that material shift simultaneously ripples through the top. And over time, it looks like a double helix. So culture change looks like DNA, which is pretty cool. I don't know exactly why, but I think it has to do with the quantum and how there's lots of layers to reality, and they all seem to have very similar patterning, like the golden ratio. Well, it would make sense that culture change in of itself, even though it's sort of an esoteric concept, or at least simply just a concept, it would make sense that culture change in of itself would act like or look like things that were part of that change, like DNA. Because your body's literally made of DNA, and the map, the blueprint that the DNA has, is what your body's expressing. So cultural change is affected and is affecting DNA. And so it didn't really surprise me that culture change in a 3D model looks like DNA. Well, of course it does, because we're human. And so this is interesting too, because what would happen if an alien who wasn't human, who didn't have the kind of DNA we had, used this model? Well, I don't know. But it turns out that if a human being has an interface with that being, then the model applies, because this map has to do with human interactions. And every time you're observing anything, that's a human interaction, even if it's an observation at a galactic level through meditation and visualization. You're still having a human interaction with Laniakea or Andromeda or whatever. That's why the model can work no matter where you're at or what layer of reality you want to use it at. Okay, so now you have the basic map. Basic map. And let's talk about change. Let's talk about a couple of really grounded examples that have to do with personal development. Because if that's all you're going to use this for, that's amazing. If you use it, I'm really excited. And this is a good place to start, is personal development, because that's a lot of times why we're here. I'm going to take a quick drink here. Okay, so I was talking about my clothes and how I had to change my clothes. Well, this all actually has to do with a cool little map that I was doing for my personal development when I was trying to switch up the way I was getting my business out there, right? The way I was getting my information out there. So I thought to myself, well, I realized that I have been underusing YouTube. YouTube is this really great visual way for me to use my material good, which is the computer and the camera and the light, right? A really great way for me to use the internet to reach more people so that they can learn to trust me through video, right? Well, this was way easier said than done. First off, the only video camera I had was my phone, and the audio was kind of bad. And secondly, I had only black clothes, which wasn't going to work. And thirdly, my beliefs about my ability to do videos was very limiting. It was hard. I had limiting beliefs around being seen on a video. I'm sure many of you can relate. So the beliefs were, I'm too ugly to be on video, right? What other ones? No one's going to want to hear my presentation. I have an overbite, and no one's going to want to look at that. No one wants to hear what I have to say. These are limiting beliefs, right, in our superstructure. So in my little map that I did for my personal self in that moment, the challenge was, can I successfully use YouTube to help reach more people in my social structure part? That was my goal. I was like, social structure, I want to have more relationships with people all over the world. And that's what I was intending. So that was the challenge I was mapping out. All right, so here's my social structures currently, and yeah, they're good, they're okay, but I'd like them to be bigger and more robust. So how am I going to do that? Well, knowing how culture change works, I needed to look at what I believed about being on the YouTube videos and physically what the situation was that would help me to make sure that I could create the new map. So I had two maps, a map of where I was at in the moment and a map of where I wanted to be. And we'll get to that. But so in the moment, I had these limiting beliefs that I discovered about being on video and all the reasons why I shouldn't be on video. And then I had the material reality. I didn't seem to have a good enough material equipment to help me do what I was intending to do. Then I mapped out my political economy. Well, how could I make sure at that moment, what were my connections in such a way that I was getting my needs met? Well, my connections were politically and economically with telesummits mainly. So that's how I was getting most of my clients, and it was all audio, and everything was on instant teleseminar or whatever. And then I'd get paid through the telesummits, but they would always take half. So I felt really limited politically and economically about how I was really getting the outreach I wanted. And I didn't have a good book published yet. And, you know, I might have a whole lot of content, but it wasn't necessarily in a fashion that I wanted to, that would reach people very well. And then social structure. Who was I connected to? Well, these telesummit hosts and hostesses and all the different clients. Remember, I'm talking about my personal development in my business at this moment with this map. And yet that was a limited map. So I only had so many social connections that were going to really help me reach people. And what was really killing me were my limiting beliefs about how I was going to reach people and how this relationship with YouTube was in that present moment and didn't look good. So I had to make some major changes. I couldn't really change the political economy part very well. I mean, I could add in more connections to more telesummits and podcasts and these sorts of things, but then people weren't actually seeing my face, which was the problem, right? And so I was mapping out my problem. And then, of course, the social structures, well, I couldn't really change a whole lot of that, really. The whole problem was that I wasn't reaching people in the first place. So what could I change? My beliefs and my material world that was helping support me reaching more people out in the world, right? And that would have included then accessing YouTube in a better way. So for example, if you go to the very, very, very first video that I did on my YouTube, you'll see me, I think I'm even dressed in black, and I can barely even look at the camera, and I'm talking into my phone. And so obviously we've come very far from that. But why? Because of culture change, personal culture change. So what I did is I looked at my limiting beliefs in my map, and I started to work on them. Doesn't matter what I look like. It doesn't matter if I'm pretty or not. What matters is the message. So I went in and I healed the trauma keeping me from being able to look at you very clearly in the camera and not worry about what I look like. And then I really worked very hard on why I was doing it too. The belief around why. Well, that's the heart of it, isn't it? Why do I want to talk to people on a computer to reach more people? Because the message I have is so beautiful and so important to me. And that's why. So I revalued the reasons why, which are all beliefs. They're all concepts. That's superstructure. I revalued them. And you could take that same map and you could watch me make those changes in my beliefs over time, right? Or like what I did is I said, well, this is where I'm at and this is where I want to be. And then I systematically worked on those pieces. And I'll show you how to do that in a second. So you can do it in two ways. You can watch yourself change over time, and or you can have an example of what you want in the future, which is why considering the future can be very useful to your personal development. But I'm not going to sit there and worry about it. I'm going to come up with a map that I want to fulfill. So worrying about the future and actually coming up with a map of what you want for the future are two very different things. So we're not going to leak energy worrying about that map. We're going to stay in the moment over time. Excuse me, sorry. We're going to stay in the moment over time to be able to get to that change, right? And systematically tweak stuff to get change to happen faster. So I worked on my beliefs and then I worked on the material part. I went and I found a better computer. I got better lighting. I started to learn how to do better videos. I got brighter clothes so that I could be more amiable to people, that people would like to see me talk more instead of me dressed like a goth all the time. And they could relate to me better. That was a belief too. Is that true? Would you really not want to hear me talk if I was dressed like a goth? I have no idea. But for me, that was a limiting belief. Oh, I can't get on a camera. I only have black clothes, right? So I had to shift that belief and say, well, nope, I don't have black clothes anymore. I have some colorful clothes now. So by adding in the material, the colorful clothes, and a little bit better way of doing videos, you know, it was slow over time, but I made changes happen faster. And now, in a pretty short period of time, my whole presence on YouTube is totally different and my reach is bigger. And that was the intention. I wanted to reach more people, but I discovered that the material and the belief systems weren't matching up with what I really wanted. So this is a good thing to do, is to take a challenge that you've got in the moment and ask yourself, what do I really believe about this challenge? What are the relationships that I have around this challenge? What's the political economy around this challenge? How am I getting the money to flow in and the connections exactly to make sure all these things are functioning? How am I meeting my needs so I can actually overcome this challenge? And what is the material world at the present that makes this challenge easier or harder? Both need to be included. So for example, in every map I make, when it comes to personal development, I include the fact that my physical body has its own challenges. And by working on my physical body and my health, I find that facing those challenges and overcoming them can happen faster. So that's important. Your body counts as a material part of your maps. And so we see the challenge and then we say, well, this is what I really want it to look like. So in my future map that I use to systematically make specific changes in order to get to the point that I wanted, which was a more successful YouTube presence, right? I came up with a map of what I wanted it to look like. I want to believe that I can do this stuff. I want to feel confident when I'm doing it. These are feelings. These are part of the superstructure. These are beliefs. I want to believe that people want to hear me talk and have the numbers to show that. And then the social structure, a much more rich connection to all the different people and clients out in the world in a way that is much more open and vulnerable and transparent. So adding more people to my social structure, that's what I wanted it to look like, and one that was going to continue to grow. And the political economy, I wanted to be able to do this without having to spend a whole lot of money. I knew that there was a certain amount of money I needed to spend, obviously getting some more colorful clothes, a better computer eventually, but I saved up for that computer. I saved up for the special light, you know, and I looked for specific kinds of clothes and I took my time on that. So I reached out and I was able to get involved in my own political economy, making shifts that were going to make a big difference. But those biggest shifts, the biggest shifts were the material ones and the belief system ones. Materially, I wanted to have a good computer with a good audio and a good enough video that I could use that was fast enough for me to upload YouTube videos when I needed to. And so I had a picture of what I wanted. Then it became very clear which things I needed to tweak. And because I've done this for long enough, I knew that if I shifted the material and the belief systems, that I would see all the rest change a lot faster. And that's exactly what happened. So for your personal development, you can either start with a challenge or you can just simply map out where are you at right now. In your personal development, if we're talking about enlightenment, where are you at? Do you have limiting beliefs about enlightenment? What social structure, what relationships have helped you or blocked you as you've been trying to become enlightened? Maybe you're married and your spouse has helped you immensely by supporting you in your enlightenment journey, or maybe the opposite is true. Maybe your cat has done more for you than your friends, or what, you know, who has been helping you in your enlightenment? Which teachers presently do you have that you trust to help you with that? What about the political economy? How much money and time and effort have you spent presently in this moment on your enlightenment up to this point? Has that been a big chunk of what you spend your time and energy and transactions on or not? There's no wrong answer, right? It's just the map of your real situation. And materially, where are you at? How do you get your food? What kind of food is it? Do we have more enlightened food versus non enlightened food? There's a good question. I just ate cheesy popcorn out of a bag yesterday. Is that enlightened food or not? What if I say to myself, well, do I believe that that food is helping me to be more enlightened, or does that matter to me? Right? Maybe it doesn't matter to you. Everybody's going to be a little different. That cheesy popcorn to me it's not going to help me be more enlightened or hinder me. It's very neutral. But maybe going to eat at McDonald's, well, that to me would make me feel less enlightened, right? So that box of chicken nuggets that I love, that's not very enlightened food, right? Because I didn't actually make it, and I didn't really make that popcorn either. Is there a difference? Do my beliefs around food affect my enlightenment journey? Sure, they do. By me making my own food, by me encouraging my family to be part of our meal, does that make deeper connection and bring more light into our lives when we're working with whole foods? What about food that we grow? We could take this to an extreme. And I want you to think about this. We grew our own corn this year for the first time. I'd never done that. I was quite amazed. It grew really fast. We grew our own corn and we ate it, and it was so good. And I thought, how amazing. Corn is one of like the worst dirty dozen on the market, right? Because it's got a lot of glyphosate in it. But here's this organic, fresh corn out of my yard. Yeah, it had some caterpillars in it because we didn't spray it. But how cool. It was so neat to be able to have nice, fresh corn from my yard that we grew with love. Is that more enlightened food? Maybe. Does that food count? Yeah, it counts as part of your reality, your enlightenment journey. What about your shelter? How does your house help you or hinder you on your enlightenment journey? Do you have too much clutter? Like me, obviously I like to collect pretty things. Does that hinder me? No, it doesn't, because it's not everywhere. I've got like a certain set of things I like to look at next to my desk. Obviously I've got a painting. This painting brings a lot of light into my life. So I could say, well, my room, my office helps me with my enlightenment journey. I'm surrounded in objects that bring more light into my life. Or is the opposite true? Maybe there's too much stuff and I feel overwhelmed, and the stuff's starting to pile up, and then my mind will go every other direction other than my personal enlightenment journey. So that gives us a clue of what has to change first. Maybe here's your map of what your enlightenment journey looks like to a great peak point. I don't think enlightenment ends. It's something you continue into. There's not an end to enlightenment, and you got to keep it up, right? So that means that, that my house is always going to get messy. So then having a house that's easy to keep up might be part of the future that I want for myself, right? Right now, that's not true for me. My house is not easy to keep up. It's an old house, and we inherited a whole lot of junk by moving into this house. That wasn't mine. Right? So that's something that, hey, well, in the future, I want my house to be really easy to keep up. And that will help me with my enlightenment journey. I want to believe that I'm doing well in my enlightenment journey. I want my relationships and my political economy to reflect that. Does that mean that my bank account ought to always be full? No. No, it doesn't. No. Money's meant to be flowing, right? So if I was to say, for me, at least right now, in my future map, I would put that my bank account would be flowing, money going in, and me spending money in beautiful ways, including charitable ways, to go bring all that money back out into society. I'd rather have a bank account that was constantly seeing money go in and out, and not necessarily for my own benefit, but for the benefit of my culture and my society, my community. And that so far is looking good. I give a lot and I receive a lot, and that flow is always happening. And so then, of course, I'd be asking myself, well, what kinds of relationships do I have in the future? Do I want any major changes in the relationships I have? I'm very lucky. At the moment, I would pretty much keep it about the same. I would have more connections to more people and clients, of course, but I really like to be able to help people to connect to their inner truth and their inner strength so that they don't need me anymore. And if they do come to learn from me, that's because they really want to, not because they have to or need to. That's the only changes I really like to see with that. So consider these things for yourself. This is how you'll use this map to begin your journey in learning how to apply cultural change methods for your own personal development. And that's a wonderful start. So I'm just checking my notes here, make sure I've said everything I wanted to say. Good. So, yes, excellent. We are right on track. And here we are at 5 o'clock. So we have 30 minutes for Q&A. And I'm so glad to serve you for Q&A at this point. So we have a Q&A box. And if you'd like to talk to me directly, raise your hand. Okay, so we've got Sherry who wants to speak directly. I'm going to allow you to talk, Sherry. Sherry, thank you for raising your hand. You are going to have to unmute yourself because it won't let me.
Okay, unmute. Okay.
Yay, nice to speak with you. Sherry, what questions do you have? I hope you've jotted them all down, and I'd love to.
Oh, thank you so much, honey. I do have some questions. Let me come out here where I was writing. I'm outside. Okay.
You got it.
Okay, one of my questions is, when you were explaining all this in the beginning, I have a question then. Where did source come from?
No one knows.
Okay.
Yep. I want you to come with me here real quick, okay? Psychically.
Okay.
Well, let's go out to the edge of the universe. And from there, you can see a lot of other universes. We know the multiverse exists. It's a fact. So there's all these other universes. And whenever I'm hanging out there, Sherry, I can see this light that's beyond all of it. And that is source to me when I'm looking at it. And this is something that I've only discovered by just hanging out there. There's this deep, intelligent light that seems to be coming through all the universes. And that's where I see source coming from. Does that resonate with you?
Yes, that does. I bet I have another question that's related to this. And okay, and I've also told myself many times it's not important to even have the question,
Sure.
but I'm going to ask it. I'm going to ask it anyhow. Okay. Okay. So you even mentioned too that all this was created like at once, like source knew the future, source knew everything.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So if source knows everything, and source would have known that this human suffering condition was going to happen.
Yeah.
Correct. Okay.
Correct.
So and I honestly feel that divine creator, pure source, is love.
Absolutely, it's love.
And so love, therefore, to me, because of my heart feeling, I would say is an emotion that's beautiful, tender, pure, gentle, humble, full of love and gratitude. I mean, it's just so much, is all the light, you know what so how could Source have created that knowing that this was going to happen, that people would have to go through all of this just so we could regain our consciousness back to remember who we were?
Yes, I have a very clear answer for you. So, at the origin of the universe, it started out with a question. The reason why we experience the source field as love currently is because that was the question that this universe was based on. What is love and what is not love? So, every learning, everything we're experiencing is answering those questions. That's why there's duality. Because when we discover light, well, what is not light?
Mm-hmm.
And so when Source suffers through you, these two things are not different. When I'm sad, Source is sad. When I'm suffering, Source is suffering. So through each individuated experience, which is an illusion, we're answering that question all the time. What is love and what is not love? And I asked Source Field this question too at one point, and I got two answers that were both equally important. Source showed me a possibility of humanity not suffering. And it wasn't pretty, Sherry. We had incredible hubris. And we went around and we started becoming incredibly destructive with our own arrogance. And then I saw this timeline or this experience that we are having, this possibility that we are having, where human beings learned compassion, true compassion, learned unconditional love as we overcame the subjugation and the oppression that we were put under. And no longer did we have the egoic hubris and arrogance that noted the other possibility for us. No longer did we have that. We were not arrogant and we were not going around taking whatever we wanted because we were the smartest, most powerful. And then that showed me the future of humankind, that we would still become galactic emissaries, but we weren't going to run around taking whatever we wanted anymore. Instead, we were coming to bring a gift of actual compassion, compassion that only someone who had suffered would have. So I'll use myself as an example. Having had a life of incredible trauma and being able to have healed from it, now I can come out with compassion that I would have never had I not suffered. And I wasn't the one alone suffering. It was Source. Source is learning through me being Elizabeth and being Sherry, and then us interfacing in this moment, learning about what is love and what is not love. And when you go really deep into the dark, Sherry, when you go really deep into what is not love, if you go all the way to the quantum level of it, you'll always find love again. You'll always find the light. And so that's the answer I've got. It's the one I was shown. It's the one I believe is true. Does that resonate with you?
It does resonate. It doesn't make sense mentally exactly, you know? And also all these other galactic beings that you're talking about that don't have emotions.
Right.
Well, that's a little confusing because Source is feeling all of the sadness of us humans.
Yes.
Or
and
the happiness.
Simultaneously, all of the wonder and power of the angels, and simultaneously all the wonder and power of gray aliens and Pleiadians and Syrians and all the things that they've been through. Yes. Most of this is not something we can mentally understand because our brains and our egoic structures are still trained to believe that we're separate from all of this. But we're not. And that's what we're kind of undoing here. We're undoing a lot of this. And that's why I said, let it move through you first. And because your brain's going to fight you.
Yeah, well, okay, so source creator created all of these other beings also,
Mhm.
then humans and other beings. Okay. Um, no, one question leads to billions of questions, doesn't it, honey? Of
Oh,
course. But one thing I want to say to you, just from my heart to your heart, um, you are very beautiful.
oh, thank you. I do.
You really are.
It's
You're
super.
so beautiful, and I get tears just saying this to you because I feel it, I see it, and I just wanted to tell you that I really love you.
I love you too. I receive that fully. Thank you.
Okay, I'll let somebody else ask a question because I'll be working with you, and I appreciate everything.
Ah, absolutely. Namaste, my dear friend. From soul to soul, I do appreciate you so much. Thank you for your beautiful, powerful question. And you're right, it opens up incredible doors, and we'll go there.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you, honey.
Of course. All right, my friends. Who else would like to speak? Go ahead and raise your hand if you can. And if you need to, you could type in a question in the Q&A board because I'm still here for another at least 15 minutes for you or more. Just depends on how many questions there are, right? These are all great questions. Yeah, so let's see. I'm just kind of looking around trying to see if there's any other hands raised. Yeah, very good. For those of you on the phone, oh yeah, so Sylvia's asking you a question. She says, I have in my notes, culture change looks like DNA when it changes. Is that what you said? Yep, you nailed it. So why? Um, and so let's say why. Why does culture change look like DNA when it changes? Because the superstructures, right, the beliefs, they move down through all the layers of culture, the social structure, the political economy, and the material. And simultaneously, the material world changes and that moves through and ripples through all the way up through the four as well. And these are four pieces, just like four nucleic acids in the DNA, right? And so over time, if you were to apply this to a 3D model, which I did, it just happened to look like a double helix. And I don't think that that ought to be very surprising now that we're really looking at the quantum nature of reality, right? So culture change, well, culture comes from the human experience, and the human experience is defined by the blueprint of DNA, and the DNA functions a certain way, and it looks a certain way. And so cultural change, well, culture comes from that. Culture comes from that blueprint. So culture change ought to, over time, then have some kind of similarity. It just happened to look like that. And I found it to be further quantum proof that quantum reality is intimately connected to our human reality. And so that's what I meant. So let me explain what people mean by 12-strand DNA, Sylvia. I think that actually, coming from a scientific background, we're not going to see 12 strands. But what is there that we can't see with a physical 3D microscope? When you're looking at DNA through a 3D microscope, you're going to see the 3D aspect of DNA. Now, in the human brain, we have mapped out, literally physically in science, that the brain makes 12 dimensions of structure, which means that because DNA has a blueprint, it's telling the brain to perceive 12 dimensions of reality all the time, to be able to access them, which is part of how I'm training you a little bit here to be just conscious of it, right? We're just starting out here. We're being conscious of it. Lots more classes coming up every month where I'm going to train you how to use that ability of your body to access all those dimensions. They've all been there. You have access to them right now. How do we do that? That's what I'll train you to do over time. But we know that the DNA itself that you can see in a microscope in the 3D, that's just one aspect of it, because what comes from the blueprint is a brain that is capable of connecting to 12 dimensions. We're not going to see that DNA change into 12 strands. That's not what's going to happen. There's nothing that needs to happen. The DNA itself already has aspects that are multidimensional, which is why the brain, because of that blueprint, it's a multidimensional blueprint. Then the brain is proof that we are multidimensional beings. 12-strand DNA, I believe, is a little bit misunderstood, or maybe a lot misunderstood, in that they're already there. The 12 dimensions are already expressed and understood by the DNA. It doesn't mean you're going to be able to have a microscope and find 12 new strands of DNA. It means that the DNA itself is a multidimensional, 12-dimensional blueprint. And that was how it was made originally. We're accessing what's already there. And so that's the job, is to explore the 12 dimensions using this body, this 3D body that actually is capable of accessing all 12 dimensions. That's the human experience. That's quantum anthropology. So we don't have to do a whole bunch of work to try to build 12 strands of DNA. That's impossible. DNA is perfect just the way it is. It's our job now to really discover what it's capable of, what our brains are already capable of. You're already built as a 12-dimensional being, and we're going to actually start being able to experience that. So Sherry's asking, or Laura's asking, is this also what you meant by the body is integrated to all dimensions? Yes. Yes. So what we can see in a microscope in the 3D is only one of 12 aspects of what the DNA really offers in its blueprints. And the body itself is connected to all dimensions all the time. It always was. It never was separated. We don't need to try to go into some other dimension. We have access to all of them already. Now we need to get retrained to be galactic and quantum beings again, because that's how we already are. That's what we're doing now, is retraining ourselves to be there. And so Sherry's asking, do we need to invoke the sacred circle of the 12 aspects of deity or perhaps source? Well, sure. If that helps you feel more connected to the 12 dimensions that are available to you, do whatever you want to do. Go in and do whatever works best for you. You're source, learning. And so source is constantly experimenting through all these different individuated versions of its consciousness. So for me, accessing 12 dimensions is easier for me while I'm doing psychic journeying and just asking to see what's available to me. And maybe by going in and doing that work around the 12 aspects of source, which might be considered also the 12 dimensions, by invoking the sacred circle, which she's right, you're right, Sherry, it's a circle. It's like layers of an onion, right? And they're layers that are not separated. There's no glass walls between dimensions. But what I'm telling you is that no, they're not dormant. I don't know why people say that, Stephen. They're not dormant. They've never been dormant. That's the trick. That's the problem, right? Is that through all of this oppression, through all this suppression, we've come out learning that somehow we're not good enough, that our bodies aren't capable enough. None of that's true. The human body and the DNA is exactly how it ought to be. What the problem is trauma. Trauma is what blocks us from accessing these things. If you want to really be able to access more dimensions more easily with your mind, your heart, and your gut, and your whole body and field, then you need to work on trauma. Trauma is the number one thing that blocks you from being able to access all of that. And that trauma is built up in our DNA memory. So we need to make sure we're cleaning up our lineage too. All of the DNA memory and all of our spiritual memory from all that trauma is what blocks us. And by coming out the other side of those challenges, by being willing to merge with each challenge and each layer of density and darkness and trouble that we come across, we can bravely merge with it and then find the gift of light on the other side and deep in the quantum layers of those challenges. That's what's going to make us as a beautiful, wonderful species on the other side of this great challenge of oppression that we've gone through. That's what is here for us to develop even better into deep universal compassion and love and be emissaries of that. So Source doesn't necessarily have to learn all about love only through the human experience, of course. Source is learning about love and what is not love through all these other experiences that are beyond the emotional and from many different dimensions all at once. That's how grand Source really is. And so we hear a lot from people talking about the 12 strands being dormant, and that activate, how to activate them, maybe receive an activation and that sort of stuff. And that doesn't resonate with me. Being aware of our true reality of the fact that our bodies are already capable of experiencing all these dimensions is exactly what we need. And so yes, consciousness activates us. Being aware of it, learning new things activates us. Learning that this is a scientific fact that your brain makes 12 dimensions and that it's accessing these dimensions and capable of it. That suddenly, blam, makes a big difference for everybody, right? That's what an activation is, right? It's the transformation that knowledge and wisdom can give us. So Laura's asking, so we don't actually have a body on all dimensions? No, DNA is a 3D creation that also has a blueprint to access all dimensions of reality. So it's not like there's 12 different bodies. But what does come through all of reality is your consciousness, which comes from Source. So Source light comes through all 12 dimensions to have the human experience in a 3D body that can also access all those dimensions energetically. So we don't need to have more than a 3D body. What we have is a 3D body capable of accessing all dimensions of light and information. So hopefully that clarifies. So Nazareno has a reoccurring question. Why do we have an emotional body and others do not? What is the emotional body? Is it a structure? Why does it work like it works? I think that's very relevant. So the reason why many beings don't have emotional bodies is simply because either they're in a different dimension and that's not what's used there, or physically, that's not how they developed. Their physiology and their biology are going to look a bit different than ours, or maybe really different. So the emotional body is deeply integrated into our nervous system. The nervous system and the heart field are what the emotional body is made of. So for example, if someone says something mean to me, I'll feel it first hit my heart, blam, right? And then my brain reacts. But what it did is it hit my heart field and it hit my nervous system it hit the electromagnetic field around my body and my nervous system through my heart. It reached my vagus nerve through my heart space. And then all that information went up to my brain in that instant. And then my brain reacts. Then my brain, mind, and my ego react to it. Right? And if your ego, what is your ego? Your ego is a whole lot of structured energetics. Your ego is all of your trauma. Your ego is attachments, expectations, judgment, and resistance. So if you've got any of that going on, then you're going to react with that. By looking at healing your trauma, going from judgment into discernment instead, healing any of your expectations, which is you leaking energy into the future, shifting your attachments, which have everything to do with your past and what you want for your future, especially attachments to outcome and people and places and things. And then looking at how you might resist information or challenges or criticism or critique or learning. Though that's egoic structure, and you can feel it. What'll happen then if I've healed those things and someone says something mean to me, I might feel it with my emotional body, which is my nervous system and my energetic field and my heart space. But then it's not going to hit a whole bunch of egoic structure in my mind and my field and my body. It's not going to hit that because I have healed it. So then I'm not going to react at all the same way as I would if I was holding on to trauma, right? So the emotional body is basically us saying, well, we have emotional reactions to or emotional relationships with the material world around us that we can physically feel in our energetic system, which is a real energy system. It's the heart, the nervous system, and the electromagnetic field around the body. That's the emotional body. Not all beings make the same system. Biologically, they don't, which is why biologically they don't have emotions the same way as us. And you all, there's a lot of beings. We're talking about thousands of different beings. Of course, Source wants to have a variety of experiences, not just a human one. So it makes sense that Source is going to create just about every possible being you can think of. This is a big universe. and we're only just tapping the surface. And we've got a lexicon of probably something like at least 1,000 or more different beings. So seriously, that's just a drop in the bucket. And there's probably lots of beings out there that have emotional bodies. And a lot of them probably don't even have the same kind of DNA. And some beings, they don't have DNA that gives them access to 12 dimensions, and others do. So I think it's a blessing that we have DNA that accesses all dimensions in its blueprint, that we have a 3D body that can experience change. And angelic bodies don't experience change. They're on the 7th dimension. They don't experience change the same way we do. Their change is very much slower. It's very different. How do I know that? Because I actually been lucky enough to talk to angels and ask them these kinds of questions, as like an anthropologist would. And we're very lucky that we have emotional bodies that we can feel. We're very lucky. So although it hurts to be a human sometimes, a lot of times, we're really lucky that we can have emotions. We're really lucky that we can access 12 dimensions. There's many beings that cannot. And why wouldn't that be the case? Of course, Source wants to have every possible variety of experience in this universe in discovering what is love and what is not love. Love is not an emotion, my friends. We feel love in our body as an emotion, but it is not an emotion. Love is a harmonic. Love is a set of frequencies that creates form. This is cymatics. Love is a prismatic that creates all aspects and all frequencies. That's what love is. That's why if you go really deep into any kind of dark or challenge and you merge with it fully, you'll find another aspect of light. And all that light in both sides of the spectrum is what love is. Love includes it all. Love looks at the serial killer and says, there's a place for you. That's a very bold statement. I'm talking about radical acceptance here. Love is all creating and all accepting of even the darkest, densest stuff. That's why it's so hard for our brains to wrap around, because we keep feeling love as a feeling. That's only one part of what love is. So this universe is intense. It's fascinating. Yeah, so I'm scrolling up here. Sherry says, I believe what you're speaking. I've worked through so much trauma. I want to relax now. Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I think taking breaks from processing trauma is very important. Resting is doing, Sherry. Resting is doing. You're not being defeated by needing to rest. No, it's a time for you to celebrate what you've accomplished. I like to imagine my trauma as like a big dam, and there's a lot of energy and power built up behind all of that, right? But I can't just take the whole dam out at once, so I take off one brick at a time. And you know what? I've learned to take off one brick at a time, and when I get one brick down, I'm like, here's my brick. I did it. I did this one brick. I'm going to celebrate. I'm going to rest because I pulled down one brick. Good job. That's the job. Celebrate, rest, one brick at a time, right? One layer at a time. We've got a lot of work to do. That's okay. That's the point. We learn through the work. It's an ongoing thing. Enlightenment is something that you ongoingly go through. And that's rest included. Rest is included. Okay, so Sherry's asking, how do angels feel joy? I don't really know exactly. I've asked them a lot of different questions, and I actually haven't asked them emotional questions like that, like, do you feel joy, or how do you experience joy? And so, hey, why don't we ask right now? Let's ask. So I've got lots of angels around to ask. So I'm going to ask that question. Let's give it a try. And so the way I do it is I'm welcoming the angelic to come and help us out here to answer this question. And then I perceive with my third eye, these are beings in the seventh dimension. And so that's part of my brain that's connected to that dimension. It's capable of perceiving it, right? And so I'm asking, hey, angels, you're conscious. We have this question. We'd like to know how you experience the emotion of joy. And so immediately I'm being shown that the angelic experience is not such an emotional one as it is having to do with qualities of light. So they're saying, when they want to experience what we might experience as a frequency of emotion, they experience as a bathing of light. And they both are similar. So they'll learn from that light because they're saying that light is intelligent. It can hold a lot of information. And so if they are trying to experience, say, joy, well, then that's like being in a certain bath of light. It's like saying that the sun, for example, might be beaming down one certain quality of light from their dimension. And so if they're going to experience joy, it'll be a percolation of that light and wisdom and knowledge into their being, which is all made of light. So the angelic body, everything has to do with light. And so with the human body, it's both light and material and frequency. So they actually, they're non-material. They don't have 3D material that all that information's running through. So that's not how they experience things. But light is knowledge and wisdom. So then they actually have knowledge of joy. They have wisdom about joy because then that light gives them more information about it. So that's what I'm seeing currently, them showing me that. So let's see. Let's discern whether that's true, right? So then we don't use our head to discern that necessarily. We're going to ask our heart, is that true? And my heart gets really excited and open, and then I'm going to ask my gut, is that true? And I get this uplifting feeling in my gut. So for me, discerning that, if that's true or not, I asked my body, which is my greatest tool for discernment, and my body said, yes, that's true. So discern that for yourself. Don't just listen to me. Ask your angels too. You're capable of perceiving them just as well as I am. And ask your body to discern the truth from that, if that's true. And play with that. Good. Okay. So Sylvia is asking, yes, there's a place for you, but I don't have to engage with you, right? We were talking about the serial killer, right? I mean, when it comes to someone who causes your inner child pain and all these things, or someone who's causing pain, right? So if there was a serial killer in front of me and I'm coming with universal compassion saying, there's a place for you. Is there a place for serial killers in of itself? Well, only in a crazy sick society, right? And the outcome we want is a better, healthier society. But there's a place for that person and their soul. And do I need to engage with them? Well, if the engagement was simply for me to witness them as a soul, well, then that's when the serial killer would show up. But if I'm not meant to engage with them in order to find some another layer of information or light beyond that, maybe interfacing with this person who's being way too violent, right? No, you're not necessarily being asked to interface with that. Get out of there. Cut these folks off. You can still love their soul and not like them. Unconditional love doesn't mean that you have to like what everybody's doing, you guys. Right? Good. All right, so Barb is asking, how do you go really deep to merge with an issue like worthlessness? So the steps, merger, you've heard me say, merge with something. There's a challenge in front of you, merge with it. So you use your awesome body to do that. So first you're gonna feel the frequency of it. The frequency is what's important. And so you're gonna feel the frequency of maybe this person's yelling at you and you don't wanna be challenged by this. You don't wanna be triggered by it. So you're gonna feel the frequency of it. Where is it in your body? Your emotional body will tell you, oh, it's hitting my heart and my tummy and my solar plexus. This doesn't feel good. Well, we don't want to resist it. So we merge with it, we welcome it. Maybe in the moment or maybe later. It can be kind of hard to do in the moment. You get better at it as you do more and more of this. Merger helps things not to turn into trauma. So we're going to go in and we're going to say, all right, I feel that feeling being yelled at. I know what that frequency is. It hits me in my heart, my gut, my solar plexus here. So then we welcome it. We'll welcome it in the body. The body's your greatest tool. Dear heart, please, I welcome this worthlessness in my body, in my heart, and my solar plexus. Now I welcome it. Then you breathe. And then does it change? Maybe it stays the same. You welcome it again and again. Maybe it'll move. You welcome it there. Maybe it moves to your ear. Stuff will move all kinds of weird places in your nervous system, emotional body. You're going to welcome it there. You're going to welcome it until in your body you welcome it. You find where the feeling is, and then you welcome it there and there and there and there until you feel a release, an opening, an expansiveness, an end to the frequency in the body. And then the frequency doesn't have power over you in that moment. Does that mean you won't feel worthless again? No. It means you've shifted a layer of it out of the way. And you're going to be going through many layers of worthlessness. All of us do, but your body will show you where you're holding on to it. Your body will show you where you're holding on to it, right? So this is a little bit of a different training than what our class is meant to be, but I know it's very useful and important because merger with these challenging things in front of us can help us not have these powerful emotions have power over us anymore and help us to heal trauma. If you're interested in that, if you're interested in healing trauma, make sure and pay close attention to the emails I'm sending out over the next several months, because in January or around then, I'm going to be offering an entire training on how to completely heal all aspects of trauma, so that you can have a lifestyle of enlightenment. And it's really deep. It goes really deep. It's a certification, but we're going to make it as affordable as we can. My friend Meg and I did this, and it's really as deep as you possibly could want to go. And it's got all the training you could ever want from that. So look for that, my friend Barb, okay? And you'll be able to shift through these layers really quickly. All right, so Meg's asking about climate change as from a quantum and galactic perspective, and she's wondering if I'll have time for that, and I don't think I will, because that would be a whole other discussion. But we are one with Gaia, and we are being asked to be in harmony with her, which is why the human race is in a great tumultuous time at the moment. Our systems need to crumble so that we can be part of the galactic field and recognize the quantum field and be in harmony with the earth, right? And furthermore, the climate is always changing, whether humans have had involvement or not. And the climate of the solar system changes too. All of these are factors, and change is reality. How will human beings get our act together in order to serve the harmony of the earth? That's a wonderful question, and we can always start with ourselves. Every small action counts when it comes to living in harmony with the planet. Every small action counts. That's where we're going. And so start with you. Start with the first, start with you. That's as much as I'll be able to give around that particular very broad topic. And Sherry says, I got that they experienced joy through us. I absolutely believe that. All that joy we have is like light, right? And then they get to bathe in the light of our energetic frequency-based joy, right? What if we never left heaven and we're angels in a simulator watching our own physical form? Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that that is true, but I think that the angelic and their presence as the species they are is incredibly precious, and that our relationship with them has been ongoing for the entire time that we've been on the planet. And angels are immortal. They have incredibly long lives, just like a star. And their timelines are very galactic level, very slow changing, yet still changing. And so it's interesting. We get to interface with many multidimensional beings, not just 3D ones. And many of them have been with us since the beginning and are moved by us and have been influenced by us. And Sherry, you feeling joy and your angels getting to experience that light is really important to the galactic. You have been influencing the galactic the whole time. All of us have. What an amazing concept to bring to our hearts. And Sylvia is saying, I'm excited to use your model for my personal development and enlightenment. Namaste. It's giving me a map where I feel stuck. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. I'm very glad to hear that. I really want people to be able to use it in a practical way. And of course, it deserves to come out of the closet, doesn't it? I'm so glad. Very good. So let's see. Stephen is asking, how can you apply the mapping to a situation when you feel like there needs to be a change in your life direction, but you don't have a clear idea of where you want to go or what you want to do? That's a great question. So, Stephen, first, make a map of where you're at, okay? Because that's going to give you some place to start, all right? And then sit down and ask yourself some very specific questions. What particular activities am I most attracted to doing? What particular bases of knowledge am I most attracted to learning about? What particular tools, whether energetic, emotional, physical tools, do I love using the most? And what vulnerable populations seem to need me the most? If you don't know the answers to those things, then you're going to go on a little bit of a journey to research. Well, what kinds of basis of knowledge are there out there? There's different kinds of science, there's different kinds of art and craftsmanship and creativity of all sorts. Which one really feels good for you? What tools do you love using the most? Whether they're emotional tools, energetic tools, material tools. What tools do you love to use the most? And then what are the vulnerable populations out there? Animals, plants, babies, pregnant ladies, new parents, vets, incarcerated people, sick people, dying people. Lots of vulnerable people out there. That's just a tiny little list. When you go through the vulnerable, which one really lights up? What lights you up? Does working with healing animals make you feel really happy? What makes you feel happy, Stephen? Does getting your hands in the dirt and growing things and watching them grow in front of you make you happy? Does building a house make you happy? What makes you happy? That's where you need to go. You know what makes me happy? This. Talking about this stuff. Talking about the human experience with people and just giving them my perspective. That's all. I just love, I could do this all day long. In fact, I do. And this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I'm so lucky to have found it. But you have to ask yourself very specific questions. You're asking, what are the material tools that really make me happy to use them? What are the relationships with the most vulnerable that make me happy? I think that the human species is a vulnerable population. So my vulnerable population, I'm looking at a galactic level, is humanity. So that's why my clients are men and women of all ages and cultures all over the world. Yeah, boys and girls, men and women, everybody. And sometimes animals too. But that's what I love. And so that's the level of reality I'm working on. Now, for you, what layer of reality do you really want to work on? That's a good question. If you're thinking at a galactic level all the time, well, which population are you being asked to work with? Maybe you're being asked to channel Pleiadians for the human race. And maybe that's what you're meant to do. In fact, there are people out there who make a living doing that. Lots of people, right? But maybe you're being asked to work at a different level. Each layer of reality counts. So ask yourself, which one am I called to work on? Which one makes me happy? Happiness is how you're going to know what you're being asked to do. And you're going to use that map. What are the concepts and beliefs that I really love playing with the most? What are the kinds of relationships with the different people that I want to help in the world, or beings that I want to help in the world? Which ones make me the happiest? Your relationship with the plants in the garden, or the animals, or the children, or the elderly? Which one really makes you happy? And then ask yourself, what tools do I love to use the most? The knowledge-based one would have to do with the superstructure. Which knowledge base do I love hanging out with the most and talking about the most? Right? That's how you're going to start to create a map of what you want in the future for yourself. Start there. Asking good questions takes you really far. Asking good questions can take you really far. And those are the questions that I've asked myself over and over again. And you know where I learned them? I learned those questions from Joseph Campbell, who's an anthropologist and a theorist and a mystic. I learned them from him. And he said, follow your bliss. So I started to ask myself, what makes me happy in each of these layers? Right? And so then I went from there, and I've been able to design my happiness and my life doing what I love the most very carefully. And then using that same map, I've been able to do that. So I hope that will help you, Stephen. Play with it and listen. If you want to send me one of your maps to look at and give you suggestions or ideas, please do. My email is elizabeth@seer, S-E-E-R, and scientist.com. Send me your maps. And if you'd like my advice or clarity about how to use them from there, I'd be happy to. But I also highly suggest, this is around the self-development piece. If you want to know how to use maps for a whole bunch of other things, like healing trauma or community building or businesses or culture change at any level, we're going to be looking at that in a different class that'll be just as long. So we're going to apply this in about every possible way as I can think of. We're going to apply this in some amazing ways so you can see how this universal mapping technique can serve us as human beings for a very long time in many ways. So this is the next class we'll be looking at, cultural mapping, how to really use this in every way you can think of. So today we only learned about personal development. And so Stephen now is learning, he's going to learn and play with this some more, and maybe we'll get some feedback from him and we'll be able to use that later. But what is your bliss? Follow that. That's always the way. And you know what? Your emotional body helps you with that. Pretty awesome. Very good. I hope I was able to help all of you. I really have so enjoyed this class, and I'm so glad and proud to have shared with you all of this information. And I can't wait to hear how it goes for you. Let me know. I just love that. I love reports back, and you're beautiful, and I love you too. And thank you for coming today. And this replay will get sent out to you by tomorrow afternoon or so. And so I'm really excited. I hope that you'll use it over and over again. And eventually we're going to turn it into a book as well. So it's all revving up. The world is ready for this, I think. And you were too. Thank you for being my very first public class about this information. I'm just so honored. Thank you so much. And namaste to all of you. Bless you. Bless you.